Good afternoon and good morning to everybody out there on this webcast today. My name is Helen Beal. I am a DevOpsologist here at Range 4. You can see my Twitter handle at HelenRanger4. Today we're going to be doing a webcast about don't hire, grow your own DevOps. And Ryan, my colleague, is helping me today. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Ryan. Obviously part of Ranger 4, also a DevOpsologist with a previous history in recruitment. Dirty word. Just going to talk through hopefully today and share some experience.
So let's get started. This is a chart I developed quite a while ago as a traditional or a representation of what a traditional IT department looks like. So what do you interpret when you look at this chart?
Yeah, so same thing, I think. Helen, obviously this is a traditional IT setup, as you said, but predominantly the type of old school businesses that are more sort of business led rather than sort of your newfound, for example, Netflix, Facebook, that are very much IT led. Would you suggest the same?
Yes. And I think what we're really seeing here is the silos, aren't we? So we're
Yes.
seeing two major silos between Dev and Ops. Obviously, we're talking about DevOps and breaking down that really big wall that happens between those two that typically have separate reporting lines. And then we're seeing other silos in there. And you might be wondering why all the little bodies in there are grey. And we'll be coming back to these slides later on in this presentation when we talk about how DevOps evolves across an organisation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, obviously we're starting off at this point. Typically, if somebody's looking into hiring a DevOps engineer or consultant, then this is a typical sort of starting point that they might be looking at. So where do we go from here, basically, is what we're going to look at today.
Yeah, so here we've got these silos, and they create all sorts of different friction, don't they? So things like developers asking for admin to production systems, the developers moaning that ops are taking far too long to do stuff. So that all makes people think that they want to do DevOps. So what have we got here?
So this is an actual excerpt from the 2016 Puppet Labs State of DevOps report. So this is sort of their investigation into the typical structure of an IT organisation. So you see, obviously, in the pie chart to the right, the different sort of siloed teams, if you will, different areas in IT with the ops, obviously, consultants, C-levels, and everything else. But what's also fascinating is the increase of DevOps teams. So obviously from 2014, just over 2 years, the number of or sort of percentage of DevOps teams has increased by a whole sort of 6%, which is quite a lot.
What do we think of DevOps teams?
Well, if you listened into our previous webcast, what is a DevOps engineer? We're quite still debated over it, still conflicted, but in essence, what you're doing with DevOps teams, you're creating a new silo. And what are we trying to do with silos in DevOps?
Break them down.
Break them down. So, yeah, it works for some companies, we think, to start the whole DevOps ball rolling, but should it be something you finish with? Probably not so much.
Yeah, and I think that's the trap that we've seen some people fall into, isn't it? It's that they think, oh, we want to do DevOps, so we'll get a DevOps team up and running. Great, we've done DevOps. Whereas what we'll see as we go through the course of this presentation is that DevOps really is a cultural organisation-wide proliferation or transformational evolutionary movement, as I quite like to say, if I can get it out. So yeah, we'll revisit teams, but those are interesting stats nonetheless. Lack of women in DevOps as well, as we know.
So what are you trying to achieve? So when putting together this sort of webcast, I wanted to, in order to understand when you're moving into DevOps, what is it that you're trying to actually achieve with hiring this person or growing, sort of bringing this person in from sort of internal in the organisation? So just speaking from recruitment experience, a lot of the time, a hiring manager looking to move into DevOps will put out the feelers for sort of DevOps engineers. But DevOps engineers, as obviously people know, are much more automation consultants. You know, they work with the Chef, the Atlassian stack, Chef, the Puppets, the automation tools. But as a business, what are you trying to achieve? Is it to to input a automation pipeline, or is it to actually restructure the business into a much better, faster, safer shipment of software? So if we move on to the next slide. So this is an excerpt from a recent Gartner study. So I believe this is from 113 organizations. And some of the biggest challenges for the movement or expansion into DevOps. So I found this interesting because, as you can see, around sort of 90%, just under 90%, is actually a people process issue rather than a technology issue. I mean, like, you've worked with many companies, Helen. I mean, like, is that what you find as well?
Yeah, I mean, I love this slide because it absolutely speaks to what we've been saying or certainly hearing and therefore repeating for years. And actually, this is a 2016 slide, so this year from Gartner, but certainly for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been talking to organisations about DevOps. People have told us that they've managed to do things like automate continuous delivery pipelines very straightforwardly. Actually, where they're really struggling is to change the culture. And in fact, we've worked with SDLCs for well over 20 years, and we've always talked about people process tools or people process technology. We tend to talk about OIA now, so organizations, interactions, and automation. It's kind of the DevOps terminology around these things. But it's no real surprise to us to see half of the organizations interviewed saying that their biggest barrier to addressing and proliferating DevOps thinking is around the people issues. And it's not just that you might not have the right people. And I think there's a temptation for people to say, oh, we haven't got the right people with the right skills, let's hire some. I think what we're trying to address really in this webcast is whether that's the right approach or whether you need to find a way to nurture and develop those people that you already have. So let's dwell for a moment or two about the typical skills of a DevOps engineer, this being a specialist subject for Ryan.
Yes, so continuing from our previous webcast last week. So I thought we'd first run through a typical skills of a DevOps engineer. I mean, obviously we've just covered, are you looking for an automation consultant or are you looking for sort of a strategy consultant? But I thought we'd go through sort of a typical CV of a DevOps engineer. So especially from my experience, and obviously a lot of CVs that we get sent at Ranger 4 as well. Some typical things that you can see, obviously the technologies that are being used for a DevOps engineer. So you can see in there cloud formation, some configuration management tools, obviously cloud. But what's also interesting about this CV is that this particular person crosses the barrier of architect as well, which I think is quite important, especially for a DevOps engineer, if you will. I mean, like, you see a lot of CVs yourself, Helen. This is quite a typical example.
It's fairly typical. I'd say, as you've identified, like the architect background is a little more unusual, not very unusual, but typically, we've got system admins maybe that have just added DevOps and a bit of Jenkins and Puppet and Chef and Docker to their CV, and we're still seeing, I can see Jenkins and Chef jumping straight out there in the DevOps consultant space for this particular person. When we do this exercise in the DevOps Foundation course, we do an exercise where we ask the participants to write a DevOps CV. And what tends to happen is they list a load of technology, and we had some cards one day larking around and putting that they wanted 10 years experience on Ansible, which was quite amusing because obviously Ansible's not even 10 years old. What they surfaced at that point is the ludicrousness in some respects, or the inappropriateness of making these technology driven. All of these technologies are relatively straightforward to access for people with the right training and the right kind of minds and background. But what we're really looking for more with DevOps is a fit to the organization and a change agent type of mentality, certainly for the vanguard of people making DevOps change.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it goes on that point, what is it you're really looking for? And, in my experience, as Helen, you mentioned, that they are definitely typically 90% of the time sysadmins that like to branch out and learn different tools and technologies. But I think that's probably the most key aspect of a DevOps role, is the willingness to learn, not necessarily having that experience, but how quick can you pick things up? How open are you to new technologies? Obviously, speed of innovation in today's IT world.
Yeah, and the technologies that are most powerful in DevOps are the ones that are easiest to learn, because what we're trying to do is create multidisciplined, cross-skilled teams. So if a technology takes you a year or a year and a half to learn, then it's not very useful for a group of people that are trying to be fluid about their roles and who needs to do what in a high-velocity environment. Yep. This is a scary slide.
Scary. So if you want to be a DevOps engineer out there, then you need to learn every single one of these tools.
And be certified in every
single one, yes. No, I think it's definitely important for people that work in DevOps to know their tool chains. I mean, obviously part of the DevOps foundation course and the training courses that we do, you do start to look at tool chains and automation pipelines and things like that. So it's definitely worth having the knowledge. But do you need to be able to code in Chef and Puppet and Ansible and code at Ruby, Python and whatnot? Not too sure. But those are your typical technologies in the world of DevOps.
And some not so typical. And there's a lot out there. And I think this is one of the challenges as well in this space, is that there's been so much new technology and automation technology that's come through in the last 4 or 5 years. It's quite hard for organisations to identify the ones to put their bets on. We have our favourites that we've learned from all the engagements that we're involved with, and we can make recommendations. But there's still quite a few on there that I'm kind of like, in for chimps. Haven't even heard of InfoChimps.
No,
and there are new ones coming through all of the time.
Yeah.
So this is challenging, to say the least. So Steve Williams, what does he say about all of this?
So Steve Williams, we've used him a lot in our presentations. So Steve Williams, VP Engineer at Ticketmaster, I believe in a meeting with yourself, was it, Helen, that he mentioned that in the whole of his area of IT, he does not have anybody working under the job title of DevOps.
And he doesn't like to see CVs coming through with it on either. Steve is a big proponent of the no DevOps in your job titles. The DevOps isn't a job in the same way as DevOps isn't a team. He doesn't like to see it there. I mean, he has the same philosophy as we do, is that DevOps is something that is practiced by everybody in the organisation. Not everybody will be doing the continuous deployment or monitoring that continuous deployment pipeline. But everybody should understand what the DevOps principles and practice are and be practicing themselves every day.
Yeah, and I think we'll show a slide in a few more from here. But there's rather than being a DevOps engineer, is it, like I mentioned just now, it's all about the ability to change and to innovate yourself, to learn new technologies and cross-functional roles.
Yeah.
If you will. So.
And Ticketmaster are fairly well on their journey. They've been DevOpsing, if you like, for a good couple of years now, so their maturity levels are quite high. They've got their own Ticketmaster DevOps strategy and things, and they've got some really good blogs that are public online. You can look up as well. They may even be linked in the slide.
Possibly. So let's walk through sort of the different ways that you can hire. Obviously, if you are looking to bring in obviously external consultants or engineers, what are the different ways you can go about them? So again, speaking from experience, I think the first way that you may start to look is speaking with certain recruitment individuals. So whether that's working with agencies, whether that's working with your internal recruitment team. But I think some of the key points to understand here is, especially if you have set out exactly what it is that you are looking for. Is it the cultural change? Is it the consultant? Is it the automation pipeline engineer that you're looking for? Does that certain agent or internal recruiter really understand the need and the requirements that you're looking for in this person? I mean, like Helen, you've gone through the recruitment process before of hiring technical people. Have you found that agencies and consultants typically understand what it is that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't have anything against recruitment agents. Some of my best friends are recruitment agents. However, I think, you've got to understand why and when their role is. And I think with DevOps, a lot of people have fallen into the trap of going, I want to do DevOps, I haven't got any DevOps, I'll go and buy some DevOps. Mm-hmm. Whereas actually there's a different approach, which I think we'll come on to. I think like in any industry, there are the good and the bad. So there are a lot of DevOps recruitment agents that just don't really understand what's on the CV. They are often just a sysadmin with a couple of tools. They are, plastered all over job boards everywhere, and they aren't really trying to understand what you described earlier, which is, what is the fundamental organisational why? What is it that they're really trying to achieve?
Yeah, and I think that's important, and you will know when you do come across good recruitment consultants from agencies, is they will ask those questions. They will ask, where is this person going to fit in the team? What is the sort of projects that they're going to be working on? What is it that you actually want them to be working on? Is it a strategy role? Is it a technology role? If they're asking all of those questions, this person actually understands what it is that you might be seeking and be able to get across good candidates for yourself. But again, there are some people out there that may not go into that much depth.
There are, and I think my biggest red flag here is going back to that slide we had earlier, the Gartner slide that explained that, from people, process and technology, that people and process together added up to 87% of the barriers for people trying to adopt DevOps. And typically what we see in the DevOps recruitment environment is people selling people that will build a tool chain. And what we see over and over again in the market is people that have built a bit of a tool chain, and it does what it does in a small part of the business, but nobody's using it, and they're finding it really hard to get the organisation to consume it. And that's because the culture hasn't been addressed, and the interactions haven't been streamlined and understood and documented and processed in a way that they can be applied to automation. So in a way, when people are hiring DevOps, I feel like they're putting the cart before the horse. They're still the people that are immature and trying to put a tool chain in before they are trying to proliferate the fundamental change in thinking across the organisation.
Yeah.
And there's some other challenges.
Well, so I thought it was important to cover off, again, sort of a lot of challenges that come from externally hiring. Is the first one, this shows a typical DevOps salary, which is interesting in the fact that, since a year ago, that the actual median salary has jumped 13%, over a year, when, Helen, as you mentioned earlier, that a lot of salaries have pretty much stayed stagnant over the last
pretty
years.
flat, yeah.
So that's a consideration. I'd also like to point out as well that, if this is business critical, if this move into DevOps is something that's been agreed, been budgeted for, has been set out, as a timeline for you to start right away. If you're looking for a permanent engineer, not only are they quite difficult to find nowadays, with DevOps mostly being contract driven, but also the length of time of the hiring process. You've got to take into account this particular person may have anywhere between 1 to 3 months notice at the current position. It's going to take at least a month, 2 months, even 3 months sometimes to actually headhunt the right person. And then, how many different interview rounds are you going to take from there? Typically 3, 4, even more sometimes. So, a lot of factors to take into consideration.
You can't do DevOps on your own.
You cannot.
So this is your contractor one. So I think we established in the What is a DevOps Engineer webcast that it's about a 60-40 split between contractors versus permanent in this space.
I believe so, yeah. I think that was one of the studies. I would probably swing more on the contract side, actually, probably higher than that.
So 70-30?
Probably, yeah. I reckon even so. Especially the government nowadays, 90% of the roles are contract. But again, I think it's important to take into account here, just over a year, a jump of £50 per day, a daily rate. These guys are getting paid well above average nowadays. Whether or not rightly so, totally comes down to the individual, I suppose. But yeah, important to point out on this as well. If you are looking to bring in contractors, is the longevity going to be there with this particular person? I think it's important to understand as well. Is this contractor really there for the wider benefits of the business? Do they understand the business objectives over the next few months? Do they understand really why they're there? Are they going to come in and really fit in well with everyone? Are they there to just build a pipeline and move on? Or are they really there to help improve the business over a long period of time? So again, a lot of things to take into consideration. One benefit with contracts is very much a faster route into hiring. Typically, sort of at least within a month, you're probably looking at taking on someone.
To get someone on site fast.
Yes, DevOps ninjas and unicorns. So
it's your slide.
It is my slide. So this slide I included because, again, this is talking about bringing an external DevOps person into the business. Again, it's touching on that point. These guys might be absolute brain boxes in all of the automation stacks, but if you're looking for this sort of DevOps ninja or DevOps unicorn to come into the business to transform the way you've been working, to be this sort of shining light, the silver bullet that's going to make everyone's troubles go away, for one, that's probably never the case. But two, is this person really going to be not only accepted in the business as such, but how easy is it going to be for this person to integrate into the business, to understand all the objectives, all the sort of business sort of targets and how everything works? It's not a short fix. It's not a quick fix, should I say. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty uncomfortable with both terms, ninjas and unicorns. Maybe unicorns a little bit more. And here we're using them to represent an exceptional individual. We use it a lot to describe the Googles, Facebooks, Twitters, all the very large organisations that have been born doing DevOps and have billion-dollar valuations and all of that kind of stuff. But I find it quite, I think, a little bit prejudiced against everyone else. It's like, what about all of the hundreds or thousands of people that have been working for an enterprise already for 5 years, 20 years? A company that we were doing an assessment with last year, we interviewed about 15 people in 2 days, and about half of them had been in that organisation over 20 years. And it's kind of like this thing, this shiny new thing. And I think you risk really alienating your existing people that have, put years of loyalty and commitment and of their personal selves and energy into a business just to swoop in and buy a couple of very expensive DevOps contractors and expect them to change the world and everyone else to think that they're marvellous. I think it's a little unfair.
No, definitely. And I think also from the other point of view as well, this DevOps ninja, quote unquote, is a person coming in. How much pressure is on that guy or girl's back to change this whole business? How much pressure is there for him to come in and
how easy is it to make change on that level?
Exactly.
And all these organisations are reporting to Gartner that they're finding it really hard to change culture. How many barriers is someone facing when they come in brand new to an organisation like that, and they're likely or potentially likely to meet some quite what's the right word, resistance.
Nice, yeah, indeed. So hiring internal, obviously, if we're going to go from using agencies, looking in, external, trying to bring someone in from outside, why not look inside? Look at people who are performing or using the new technologies, reading the whole, DevOps books. They've read the Phoenix projects and they understand all of what's going on. Can that person then be brought up through the company to make this change? A lot of the times, or quite a few occasions, like myself as well as Helen, we've definitely been on customer site and other customers that are not working with us, but we've seen time and time again that there's been people that have been taken from, say, for example, from the sysadmin area or operations area or even development. They've been asked to say, right, we're going to do DevOps.
You're now DevOps.
You're now doing it. Go do DevOps.
And they look a little bit like this bear in the field. So yeah, that happens, that people
Definitely.
just get identified and told that they're going to be now responsible for DevOps, and they look a little bit like a rabbit in the headlights. And we've done several webcasts and events and stuff. You can look back in our archive on things like what support do DevOps change agents needs and things like that. And I think what happens is often management recognise somebody that has got the ability and the energy and enthusiasm to make change happen, but they dump them in on the deep end. And I think another repeated pattern that we see is often this person that gets given DevOps suddenly becomes like a glorified sysadmin or DBA, and they're asked to perform loads of low-level automation tasks, or actually what their job is to evangelize DevOps through the organisation. They need a lot of management support to turn that perception around.
A lot of management support, obviously people skills, leadership skills come into play, and it's
a tough job.
So, if we're not going to hire, why don't we grow DevOps?
So help that little bear in the field.
Help the little bear. Give the little bear some training. So Range of Four obviously offer courses as well as other companies do as well. But I thought it is worth drawing attention to the DevOps Institute. So Helen is on the board of regents for the DevOps Institute, together with Gene Kim, the author of the ever famous Phoenix project. So the DevOps Institute provides many different training courses and certifications in learning DevOps, in learning agile methodologies. But I think what's important is that these certain courses and certifications are not just technology based, are they?
Very much not. No, I mean they're the three classes that we're going to talk about today that are currently available. The DOI, with its Board of Regents being the developer of the courseware and the course and the exams. You actually sit the exams through PeopleCert, who are a global certification provider. But they are all, if you like, theory courses. So it's not like you're sat in a room with a laptop and we're going to start using Puppet. The DevOps Foundation course is a 2-day course. It is very interactive. It is very workshopped. So we put lots of exercises in there. So you're not just, there are like quite a couple of hundred slides, but it's not just a load of slideware. And it's 2 days, and it's looking at all of the theories and principles that underpin DevOps, so Agile and Lean and ITSM and the 3 ways and theory of constraints and PDCA cycles and all of that kind of stuff. The other couple of courses, we've just got one slide here, which is the Agile Service Manager course. There's also an Agile Process Owner course. So this is really to help operations teams who have noticed that their development teams are operating in an agile manner, and they want to match up the way that they're delivering services to the way that the developers are delivering code. So the Service Manager course is basically the equivalent to an Agile Scrum Master course, and we also have a Process Owner course, which is the equivalent to the Product Owner course. And then we have some new ones coming through, so official announcements to go out tomorrow about these courses, but we have the Continuous Delivery Architect course coming through, and again, these are all certified via the DOI. We have a DevOps Test Engineer and a DevSecOps Engineer, and also a DevOps Leadership course coming through. The other thing that we like to do is combine these courses with our serious play, so we have a business card simulation, or a card-based business simulation based on the Phoenix Project game, which I think we've mentioned at least twice already in this webcast, which gives us an opportunity to use the skills that we've learned in a practical environment. So again, not a technical environment where you're coding or doing deployments, but an environment where you can take those skills that you've learned about collaborating and shifting left and having a no blame culture and performing retrospectives and visualizing work and apply them in a real context.
Yeah, but again, I think this brings us back onto where we started. Where are we going with this? What kind of we like to say a range of 4 people, process, tools.
OIA, Organizations Interaction Automation.
That's the new version of it. Yes. So obviously addressing the culture is much more important than the technology. So I thought we'd run through some slides to help that out. So I like these pictures. The one in the top left always pops up on LinkedIn and everywhere else. So I thought that the first point in just making in this is, why don't we just stop chucking things over the fence and leaving people to be alone on their work? Why don't we just start getting people to just sit together, everyone have fun, talk to each other, learn what everyone else is doing, learn what's going on around you, and help each other out in essence.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about the individual bear in the field and how they often get given this DevOps role and how hard that is for them. And then we talked about some training courses. And I think it's important to note at this point that you can't give the bear in the field a 3-week training course and suddenly they're DevOps. This DevOps stuff has to be understood by lots and lots of people in the organisation. You can have evangelists, you can have people that help standardise tool sets, you can have people that run the cultural change programs. But as Ryan says, it's really about getting people together. So we're going to go back to this slide. I think it wasn't showing properly at the start of the presentation, so I apologise for this, but this is the representation we were talking about earlier about a traditional IT department and the silos that you see. So dev on one side and ops on the other, and then more silos in between. And then this is typically, we're going to go through in a moment, how a organisation changes. Ryan did refer to this slide briefly earlier, and really what we're talking about here is when we talked about Steve Williams from Ticketmaster not liking DevOps in a job title, basically DevOps doesn't like job titles at all, because job titles are very restrictive. So we like roles, because roles allow us to be more fluid. And this is a slide from a presentation I did with Soren from Lego, one of our customers, who came over to the DevOps Enterprise Summit for me with me at the end of June. And what we were doing here was talking about the lack of job titles in DevOps. And this is the example from Lego about how they took all of the job titles on the right. So you can see Scrum Masters and Product Owners and DBAs and sysadmins and QAs and testers. And they made everybody continuous delivery engineers. And then they were able to operate in whichever role was appropriate for that point in time in that day.
I like to include Albert Einstein in this famous quote that we like to include in a lot of our talks. So, obviously, if you're trying to change the process, it's all about changing the thinking overall. You can't change the processes are created through our thinking, so it can only be changed again through changing our thinking, which is quite related to DevOps, I think.
I think so. I think that in IT, we're easily swayed by tools and technology. Mm-hmm. We're quite geeky. We forget that we're actually a bunch of humans with minds at the end of the day, and our realities are created by ourselves. And we also have the ability to a great extent, not completely admittedly, because there's other humans that will change things in other directions, but we can choose to change direction and take control and change the way that we work. So if we go back to, or we talk a bit more about cultural change, we've got this dip that people tend to go down. So when we're going through a change program, this is individuals will go through this, getting excited about it, and then a bit scared, and then they'll hit the slough of despond, and then gradually they'll come on the other side. And different people go through this at different rates and at different levels. And actually, I drew a replacement for this at one point where actually there's kind of more like multiple waves that you go through, and hopefully they're all going steadily upwards as change happens and improvements are had. But this is back to the organisational change chart. So you can see now we've had a few of these bears in the field, if you like. So a few of the grey bodies have turned green as people have started to
come on the courses,
embrace DevOps and read the DevOps project, the Phoenix project, and start to change the way they think. We've got the business turning around to look into IT, and we've got some executive sponsorship at the development level. And this slide, or this set of slides, originated from me talking about how DevOps is a grassroots movement. So this is talking about starting from grassroots, but then having, this bottom-up, top-down approach. And we definitely need both in DevOps. I think that's widely recognised and articulated. This is a typical next step for people, particularly as they start to embrace Agile. So they've broken down some silos here on the development side, and I've arranged teams around the red bods now have product owners, and I've made them red because often we find they come out of the business and often they don't fully understand incremental or iterative improvement to begin with. So there's often work to be done there. Again, a typical use case for the Phoenix project game. Other challenges other than that is that we've now separated all the testers out. So if these testers used to all work together, they used to share best practice and knowledge, and now they're all separated out. They might fragment tools. They might forget to tell each other about the great things that they've been working on, or big hiccups that they discovered. So we've got more and more people turning green as time goes on. Operations are starting to get involved. Here again, you're seeing the DevOps team that we discussed earlier. As I said earlier, this is often seen as an anti-pattern because, as you can see here, we've just created another silo. We've got a couple of renamings, so we've seen this happen. Actually, renaming teams can give people a bit of a new lease of life. Then we've got the teams growing and growing, and the thinking proliferating. And then this is where we want to end up, where everybody in the organisation has taken on the DevOps thinking. We've lost the silos. Everybody is organised around products or services. We've got some tools management or governance in the dashboards and automation alignment team. We've got much less management, so we've flattened the management hierarchy, and we have this customer innovation focus. So we've got this comment, IT is the business. I was at the DevOps Days event in London earlier this year, and John Molsky, one of the writers of Lean Enterprise, along with Jess Humble, so from ThoughtWorks, both of them, said, years ago we used to talk about IT aligning with the business, then we talked about it integrating with the business. Now we're in this lovely place where IT is the business. So this is where we want to end up. So this is really our kind of final slide to say why we believe that you should grow your own rather than hire DevOps, because this is a lot of people to hire and train, or even hire if you're hiring them with the right skill set. So you can't just buy 5 DevOps people from the contract marketplace and think you've done DevOps.
Yeah.
It really is an evolutionary transformation movement that takes a lot of time and a lot of cultural change and a lot of people to change the way that they think and that they work in order to make the most of it. So that brings us to the end of our slides today. I don't think we've got any questions. We've overrun slightly, so thanks everybody who's still on. If you've got any questions, you can post them in the question box now or the chat box.
Just for worth making a point, if you did want to check out the training courses, you can pop onto our website, ranger4.com, on the mastery side as well. The next upcoming DevOps Foundation course is in November. Getting quite busy already, so if you are interested in that, do check it out as soon as possible. Everything else can be found on there, obviously what we do and how we do it.
So thank you, Ryan, and thank you very much, everybody, for participating today, and have a great rest of your afternoon, morning, day, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.